Good afternoon, everybody. You're all very welcome. My name is Kevin Lynch. I'm Senior Planner, Assistant Director with the Southern Regional Assembly, and we're the Managing Authority for ESPON in Ireland. So today is a very important day. It's our introduction to the ESPON 2030 programme and the opportunities to engage and into the new programme, and some insights from previous projects. It's a short information session. I'll be handing over shortly to David Kelly, Director of the Southern Regional Assembly. And then we'll have Victor Shedowski, Director of ESPON. Then Lorcan Griffin from Cork City Council will bring you through a project that was undertaken there. And then from the academic side, we'll have Needmore Cherry and Cian O'Callaghan. Also, we've Caroline Kramer and Anne Hamilton from the ESPON as well in Ireland. In terms of the programme, it'll follow the outline that you've seen there. In terms of the running order, it's a short session, so if you can post questions in the Q&A, and we'll take those and we'll do our best to answer them at the end. So I'll hand over now to David Kelly from Southern Regional Assembly.
Good afternoon, everybody. As Kevin said, you're all very welcome. Both of us represent Ireland on the Monitoring Committee of the ESPON programme. And the purpose of today is really to highlight the new features of the ESPON 2030 programme, but also to highlight some of the opportunities to engage in the programme. We're obviously very conscious that over the last programming period in particular, for various number of reasons, participation from Irish partners has dwindled off to some degree. And in fact, in the first couple of calls in the new programme, there hasn't been any Irish participation either. We're one of 8 countries where there hasn't been any Irish participation. So we're obviously very anxious to reverse that trend, to encourage more Irish participation in the programme and to highlight the benefits of that. So working with our colleague, Caroline Kramer in Maynooth University, who's the ESPON Contact Point in Ireland, we're organising a number of events. And this is the first in a series of events to try and increase the participation, really to highlight the work of ESPON, how it can support development and implementation of policy through research, through data analysis, through spatial analysis and mapping, I suppose to help us all in national, regional, local level and decision makers in terms of implementing and supporting policy. And look, I suppose from our perspective at the regional level, as we implement the regional spatial economic strategies, this will be supportive in that way, but also it'll support local authorities in the implementation of the local county and city development plans. Also, with the review of the national planning framework underway, we will be reviewing the regional strategies going forward. So all of the spatial analysis and comparative analysis and benchmarking that ESPON can do for us will be critically important in that regard. So as Kevin said, look, today will be about getting information about the new programme and the new features of it within that, to hear about the thematic action plans, which will guide the direction of travel for the programmes. We'll also hear from, I suppose, people who've participated in the last round to get their perspectives, their experience of working with the projects, but also with working with the programme, but also, I suppose, to get some insights into what worked, what didn't work, and what are the key success factors. As Kevin mentioned, there is an opportunity to pose questions, so we will encourage you all to pose the questions on the Q&A, and we will try and address those as best we can. And then Caroline will give a perspective from the European or the ESPON Contact Point, what her role is, how she can help and support, and also then maybe some closing remarks. So look, at the end of all of this, we really hope that we will encourage greater participation in the ESPON programme. As I said, this is the first of a number of events that we will be holding over the coming months and years, along with some events that the programme itself will run. They hope to hold a number of webinars around the programme as well, which Victor will speak to later. So look, with those quick words, I'll hand back to Kevin, who will take you through the rest of the agenda.
Thank you very much, David. And so now I'll hand over to Victor Shedowski, the Director of ESPON, who'll give an overview of the new programme and those key areas that are important and could be of relevance to Ireland. So over to you, Victor.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone to this seminar. Now, as you can see the screen, I would like to move on to the next one, just to give you some information about what we are. ESPON is the EU-funded program under the cohesion policy. We're one of Interreg programs. And if you steer to the next slide, please, you will see a quick dossier about what we do. Some people say we are a research program. We are not. We are the program that is dedicated to policy making at all levels, from the EU down to local. And our main, say, modus operandi is to bring research closer to policy making. So we provide territorial analysis, data, and policy advice to all ESPON countries, and these are 27 EU countries and 4 partner states. And we use it for making the policies more informed. By more informed, we mean that the policymakers are able to benchmark the country, region, specific functional area, or city, may also understand the new potentials, challenges, trends, patterns, and then also based on that to respond with adequate policies that will be resilient, sustainable, place-based, you named it. So we have multi-level governance, we have cooperation between neighboring territories, we have a place-based approach. So all of these keywords that you should know really well when implementing programs and projects under the cohesion policy and structural funds. Next one, please. This is a sort of a provocative slide to show you what we are not. And one of the main sort of an area of confusion is that our logo is very similar to Epson's one. We are definitely not providing any printer solutions. We are not providing office supplies. Sometimes we get queries on our, say, general info .espon.eu mailbox asking about some service for printers, and unfortunately we need to decline. As you are going to ask us a service for policy making, we are not going to decline it, and definitely we are going to help you out together with the ESPON Contact Point and monitoring committee members in Ireland. Next one, please. This is just a quick nutshell what ESPON does. We do maintain a lot of contacts, the stakeholder networks, the research networks in many countries. We do many studies, many reports. We also organize some publications, some events on demand by specific stakeholders asking us questions about how to deal with specific policy challenges. And we are able to gather quite a nice group of experts. Also, we organize peer learning workshops. We organize peer reviews. So there is a lot of benchmarking, interacting, and networking going on within ESPON. And this is what we do in return for the budget that we dispose at roughly 50 million euros per 7 years periods. Next one, please. Then I would like also to entice you into maps, because I think a lot of people like maps. And this is one of the, I think, very intriguing area where we are able to present territorial distribution of different phenomena in the space. So I will lead you through some of those recent findings of ours, not giving you specific results, but just presenting to you some nice illustrations on the maps, and then leading you also to the reports that are available on the ESPON website. Next one, please. This is one interesting area of our consideration, meaning the fondees, based on the previous quite a good and flagship project we ran under ESPON, where we tried also to prove that the space of places has been turning into the space of flows, where we have different geographies that we need to deal with. And it's important also that the policymakers at different levels understand this transformation from the places to the flows, so that they can really react to what's going on across the different territories. Next one, please. We also do a lot on divides. It's not only the typical East-West divides, geopolitical, as we have known really well, but also some new emerging facts. And this is one interesting, maybe not that well solicited divide yet, but you see to the left the Twitter account of the former minister of from Bulgaria, that claimed that we cannot ignore the air quality divide. And actually, you may see also by the certain performance of the ppms in cities, in towns, that we may talk about some spatial pattern developing as we say it. And then on to the right, you see a different. This is a digital divide, where we have no longer east-west, but we have north-south divide, with the exception of well, maybe some capital cities in the southern part of Europe. That a lot of areas in the southeastern parts of Europe in particular experience a lot of problems with the digital divide, the people that are left behind in terms of the digital competences. Next one, please. Then we do also a lot of research and a lot of policy advice on shocks, overlapping, coinciding. We know all about the different shocks and what it means, but we try then to put all the different implications, territorial implications of the shocks on one map, presenting what it means in terms of, for example, the employment. And also there are very interesting observations for Ireland, as you may see, regarding the impact of war on Ukraine, on Ireland, the way that the GDP indices in the country may be affected by the long-standing war consequences. Next one, please. Also, we are trying to alert policymakers on exposure to hazards. And you see also the two snapshots here. To the left, we have the Po Valley in Italy with the different exposure to the temperature changes. And then the complex compound map to the right on territorial susceptibility to natural hazards, when you see that the pattern is very diversified across Europe when we compare and put together the different elements of droughts, floods, storms, earthquakes, landslides, and so on and so forth, which is also important for policymaking to be aware of and react in a proper way. Next one, please. There is also another very interesting observation on the inner peripheries. So the peripheries, you may say the areas that within the country boundaries are not properly served with services of general interest. And that's why we call them inner peripheries, in contrast to the geographical peripheries at the European scale. And to the right, we have also the different types of regions that demographically shrink or have shrunk because of many reasons. And in the report on ESPON Escape project, you also understand the reasons why the certain areas are still growing or growing and then shrinking, or in the reverse way, shrinking and growing. Also very interesting to understand this NUTS3 level distribution pattern. Next one, please. Then we have also a new discourse at the political level about departing from the typical GDP-related indicators to a more abstract, a more maybe a qualitative discussion on the quality of life, where also ESPON made an endeavor to depict the territorial quality of life distribution, which you can see also to the right-hand side. We don't treat it as a sort of a dogmatic visualization of the quality of life, but some sort of a food for thought that it's important also to raise this issue in national, regional, and local policymaking discourse. Next one, please. Then we do also a lot of encouragement for experimentation within ESPON, and also that should stem from ESPON. And you may see also the mind maps, the soft territorial cooperation approaches in visualizing the future scenarios for macro-regional cooperation. And I know that there is ongoing discussion on the emerging new macro-region, Atlantic Arc macro-region, that Irish regions, I think, are also in the loop. So this might also serve the purpose of visualizing the different futures, what kind of future would be the most acceptable one and most desirable one in terms of the development. Next one, please. Then let me tell you a little bit about what we have started doing, or we are going to do within ESPON 2030, so the 2030 edition, even though we talk about the programming period 21-27, but I think 2030 sounds much better in terms of the communication. Next one. So we have a different mission, different logic. We, of course, need to adhere to green and just transition. And because we are the territorial program, you see also the certain addition here in the formulation for all people in all places. That is why we also need to propose some services, some support to the different places in Europe, bearing in mind the territorial specificity. And we have two building blocks. One is to deliver research and then to transfer research. Deliver research means evidence production. We have different types of activities, European research projects, which are the large-scale pan-European analysis. We have also targeted analysis dedicated to specific problems of groups of territories. And I will talk about targeted analysis a little bit later. Also territorial studies that are dedicated just for one country, like Ireland, and are based on specific policy urgencies that we can also do a bit of, short track analysis. We also might have policy program analysis and so on and so forth, policy papers. So we have a full portfolio and the list is not exhaustive. On the other hand, we have also knowledge developments. We have different sorts of stakeholder interaction with thematic seminars, peer learning workshops, as mentioned, policy labs, whatever other networking events or learning events you might want us to organize for you. And we have the new narrative, thematic action plans. These in project terminology are similar to something you call thematic work package. So these are the bundles of activities that have the similar theme and then comprise a number of different types of activities under the same heading, and also cross-thematic activities. ESPON is a small program, as you understand, and there are many other organizations that deal with territorial analysis: OECD, Joint Research Center, European Commission, World Bank, United Nations, Eurostat as well, many others. So our decision makers want us to focus on the gaps in evidence and knowledge. So we need to work according to more managerial approach to identify the specific needs, and then to discuss what could be timely, meaningful contribution from ESPON that could contribute to stronger territorial cohesion. So we are very managerial. Sometimes we say we pitch, we sell, and then we also measure the footprint of ESPON among stakeholders who receive the support. Next one, please. This is just the confirmation of what thematic action plan is about. I will not dwell very much about it. Of course, it must be a very logical narrative, but it's a living narrative. So in case we see something that is now emerging or there are some changing circumstances, we are happy to actually make some modification to a thematic action plan to incorporate new things as long as they fit the purpose and also let us exert a strong footprint in policy making. Next one, please. These are the 8 thematic action plans that so far have been on the market. There are 4 ongoing ones since late 2022, and there are 4 new ones that just yesterday were approved by the ESPON Monitoring Committee. And you see also the catchy phrases that denominate those 8 thematic action plans. You see a palette of topics that we are interested in, from more ecological ones or environmental ones like climate neutral territories and its twin brother, the nature-based adaptation to climate change, through the ones that are more social, like a perspective for all people and places, more that deal more with resilience, like places resilient to crises. We have one dedicated to new emerging geographies based on flows, geography of flows, as mentioned in my past slides on governance of new geographies. One cross-border on both land and maritime borders, I think should be very interesting for Irish stakeholders in scope living, working and traveling across borders. There is one on smart connectivity, which is both digital and physical, so transport connectivity. And then we have one which is more global, and this is about, well, what the European territories should do in order to maintain good global interactions, how then to deal with the EU open strategic autonomy. So more global problems and challenges related with the position of Europe against other superpowers and other continents, which is a complete novelty also in the ESPON terms, and would like to experiment a lot here in that thematic action plan. Next one, please. This is just another way to entice you. These are the topics of those biggest projects that we just started, European research projects or pan-European analysis, that still contain case studies from the countries that see those themes as of primary importance for policymaking. So under the 4 thematic action plans that we started some time ago, there are already 6 projects going on. So they just started with the contracted researchers who would do a lot of analysis and also then collect data and present the results in roughly 1.5 years from now. So interesting topics, and of course you are most welcome to trace them down our website and also to follow up on the results that we'll be presenting on a regular basis. Next one, please. And this is something that I would like to talk to you more about, targeted analysis. Very often we say that the projects I present in the previous slides, European research projects, are our, say, biggest caliber activities. Here we have more targeted support for the groups of countries that's similar to what you see in Interreg world, when we have different project proposals come to us and then would like us to finance the specific studies for their purpose. So you also see an interesting array of different topics within the themes of the thematic action plans. By the titles themselves, I do believe you can also understand the main rationale, the main problematics that these projects, the stakeholders behind, would like to raise. These are shorter projects that run about 1 year, 12 months, from the contract till the final delivery. And again, it's very important that you, as the stakeholders representing Ireland, are really active in proposing topics that you would like also to see how your regions are faring against regions of similar kinds across Europe, because there might be some interesting learning curve that you would like to adopt, and also to maybe to inspire some other regions in Europe based on your good practice related with policy making. Next one, please. So I would say as follows: what makes ESPON results relevant for policymakers? First is that we provide facts and figures. So you can base your policy making not on just something which is abstract and volatile, but is based in real analysis done by qualified researchers that we contract. Again, we have pan-European comparisons or area-dedicated analysis. We offer direct support to different institutions at national, EU, local, regional level. And we also provide the space for you to reap inspiration and share actionable knowledge. So the knowledge on territorial trends derived from our project that you can also actually inject into your policy making. And because we are managerial, we offer you flexible delivery formats and timeframes, and they are very much steered by the demand of specific recipients. Maybe also I should pitch you with another very important information. The service by ESPON is free of charge. You don't pay anything because the contributions are paid by the countries and the Commission. So you, as the organization requesting service, you don't pay it. You just invest with your staff and your time to be part of the process of co-creating the content of the project, the terms of reference in case we need to contract it on the market, of have good researchers working for you and us, and then also to communicate results and try to set the results in your policy framework. Next one, please. Again, we have different formats. I will not talk about it, but we also have many interesting tools where you can see in the so-called knowledge portal. You are most welcome to go to ESPON website and then go to the knowledge portal to experiment with different indices, indicators, and series of data. You may create your own maps. We have podcasted videos, story maps, blog posts, and also our data set. And whatever we do and publish is free of charge. And there is open access information. So you can peruse it, you may browse it, you may also inquire with us for any specific information you need. And twice a year, we issue a territorial magazine that we present opinions of influential policymakers and researchers on the recent European trends. Next one, please. This is just perhaps to raise this issue with you that, as David and Kelly were saying, so far in this ESPON 2030 program, there was quite lukewarm interest from Irish stakeholders to be part of ESPON. So out of the 2 generations of targeted analysis so far, we received none from Irish or involving Irish stakeholders as partner. So we're most happy also to see some movement here, and we are also ready to assist you in finding the best format and the best time frame to do so. Next one, please. And this is my last one. So thanks a lot for your time, for your interest, and I will be happy to answer any questions you might want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor, for that very important overview of ESPON. I suppose it is in terms of the encouraging Irish participation in the project. I think it is very important, and I think there are in terms of the themes of ESPON, they resonate, really importantly with the changes in our society at the moment in terms of the dramatic growth in population, the challenges we face in terms of climate change, the shocks to the system through the war in the Ukraine and how it has impacted in Ireland. So even just those examples show where ESPON can be a benefit. It's also in terms of the point Victor was making about the link between research and policy. We are at a critical point nationally in terms of policy. Significantly, national planning framework has been reviewed, and other documents and policies will flow from that. So it is at a very important time in Ireland, in both in terms of the dramatic changes that are happening, but also the fact that there is a policy response to that. So I think there's a lot of food for thought there, and there's a lot of possibilities in terms of where ESPON can assist in terms of those challenges that Ireland faces on its own, but also with the linkages to Europe with those. And I think in terms of where ESPON has assisted in the past, our next speaker is very helpful in that regard to show where it has been of help in terms of in Cork City Council. So I'll hand you over now to Lorcan Griffin, Senior Executive Planner with Cork City, to talk about their experience with the Ensure project. So I'll hand over to you there, Lorcan. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Kevin. Looking forward to sharing our own experience of taking on an ESPON project, a targeted analysis. I'm just going to share my screen there, and I'll just pop it up, and hopefully we'll be able to talk you through it over the next 10 or 15 minutes. Now I'll try again there just to pop it up. Is that okay, Kevin or Anne? Can people
Perfect.
see that?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I'll say thanks very much for the opportunity. Maybe just to explain why and how we got involved in ESPON. It was in 2008 to 2019, and picking up on Victor's presentation, it was the targeted analysis aspect of that. So we had a very specific, I suppose, ask in terms of what we wanted to get out for it. I might talk a little bit more about that. So our project's name was Ensure. Like every European project, you need an acronym, and that stands for European Sustainable Urbanisation through Port City Regeneration. So very specific to Cork and where Cork was at and is at in terms of those key sites for regeneration that are identified as national enablers in the MPF and strategically very important regional hubs for regeneration in the Southern Rhesus. So key to our own area and just generally in the background, I suppose we took this on when a boundary extension was just happening and was passed in 2019, which led the pathway for a new development plan. But the focus of these areas, particularly South Docks and North Docks in the city, was well established, and then Tivoli, which I'll talk a little bit more about, was very much the background of the focus of this research. So in terms of project scope, it was very much about research and knowledge transfer, as Victor has said, but very much with the idea of applied research, that we can take what we learn on and apply it within a specific area of policy development. So the idea of research and knowledge transferring, assessing the development challenges around realizing port city regeneration, and critically in small and medium-sized European port cities. So, at scales that are relevant to Cork City. The core objectives provide insights to policymakers on regional impacts of port city regeneration as a driver of European sustainable urbanisation, growth and resilience. That's very much about the transferability of the knowledge within a European project, which is kind of standard practice for a European project. I suppose at a local authority level, it was very much to provide a better understanding of what methods and frameworks and tools and instruments are out there with our European colleagues in similar post-industrial scaled cities throughout Europe, and to look at those and help that enable us and inspire us to look at how we implement sustainable regeneration. So very much about delivery, and specifically in relation to city docklands, which is north and south docks in the city centre, on the edges of the city centre, and Tivoli docklands, which is 2.5 kilometres outside the city centre, but a very strategic site also. So in terms of the project format, the stakeholders were ourselves as leads, so we took on the lead on this, and I'll talk a little bit more about that and what that involved. It was the city of Aalborg and their Department of Urban and Spatial Planning. It was Brest Metropole, which essentially is like the regional assembly for the city of Brest, and the municipality of Catania. The contractors, Rampole Management Consulting, which are a large European engineering and architectural consultants who are heavily involved in a wide range of regeneration projects in urban areas. And then the research projects, critically, two Irish, UCD and Trinity, and the University of Palermo. The budget was 249,570, so quite healthy. The lifespan, as Victor's picked up on, it was a year. Now, either side of that, you have obviously your application process, which I'll talk a little bit about, and then post dissemination as well, some light stuff after. Key dates and you know, important to know, I suppose there was the inception and delivery, and pre that there was the application process, the interim delivery, draft, final delivery, and then final delivery. Either side of that, there were 3 workshops which were hosted in Cork, Aalborg, and in Brest, which were very fruitful. In terms of the tasks, and Cian and Niamh will talk a little bit more detail about this, but at that European scale, it was very much about identification of impacts of port city regeneration. So, you know, we're very much at the implementation stage with lots of history, but other port cities are obviously at different stages as well. But it was about that transferability of knowledge across similar port city, post-industrial cities of similar scale. Second task, analysis of port city regeneration within the 4 stakeholder cities. So that was very good for ourselves, obviously, as lead, but also for the other 3 stakeholder cities, that they were getting a wealth of research and knowledge and applied stakeholder interviews, etc. At a similar level to ourselves. So that was attractive for them to get on board. And in terms of the third task, it was that database, which was really rich for us. And I'll leave that to Cian and Niamh to talk a little bit more about. But it did look at over 40 European port regeneration schemes, and not just your traditional ones, but very much relatable to the issues that we had. Importantly, I suppose the analysis in regeneration looked at issues that weren't traditional planning issues or even local authority issues that we're focused on, but are very, very important to delivery. So issues like finance models, which are critical when you're looking at really complex regeneration areas. Governance, which is an emerging issue. Obviously, we've seen more advanced governance in Dublin in terms of the structures that are up there, but it's certainly something that has emerged post our study in Cork also. Catalyst development, you know, traditionally we've heard of Bilbao, etc., but there's a range of different catalyst type of developments that are influential to spurring on regeneration. So that was a good learner. And then critically implementation, which was obviously key to where we're at the moment. Key outcomes for us was the framework, good practice framework document itself. So that provides a very useful structure and framework when you're looking at similar types of urban regeneration sites. So that was one of the key outputs. But the process really was probably the most important part, and the focus. So we engaged with a wide range of stakeholders. You know, when our own project, it's not just within the building, but importantly within the building, but outside the building, including the Port of Cork. You know, each partner city had 25 plus stakeholder interviews. So you have 100 stakeholder interviews just for the 4 case studies. So there's lots of knowledge that comes out of that. And also in the longer term, it was the networking and learning outside of that. So we learned about, there was a focus on 17, I think, ports, cities that were found to be most replicable of us as leads in terms of the issues that we face and faced in terms of policy implementation and delivery. You know, so cities like Bremerhaven, Basel, Norrköping in Sweden, not ones that roll off the Irish tongue, or you know, we would have had great awareness of before in terms of you know, being repeatable to the problems that we have and the challenges that we face in terms of regenerating these areas. So key learnings there. But critically, I suppose the outputs and the process were key to us delivering new policy for City Docklands and for Tivoli Docklands as part of the Cork City Development Plan, which was adopted in August 2022. And as I like to call them, there's many LAPs that are stitched into the development plan, and the learnings out of this project were critical to, you know, spurring our thoughts on and what policies need to go into the city plan for those two areas. I'm just going to talk you through, I suppose, my own views in terms of the project, and it's useful being 4 years out of it and seeing what happened after, and what worked, and maybe advice for other people who are interested in taking on this targeted analysis ESPON research. So obviously we led, and I think that was critical. You know, it's lighter to lead on this project than other EU projects that we've been involved in. You know, it doesn't have the responsibility of Horizon 2020 in terms of that time and resource, but as lead, obviously you get to dictate the pace and the focus in collaboration with your partners. So that was critical. We had some really interesting partners, particularly Aalborg and Brest, for two very, very different reasons, but very interesting in terms of, you know, two post-industrial regional cities with different challenges and different approaches. Brest in particular was interesting, given that their whole naval infrastructure is moving to Toulon, and it was more of a phase type of regeneration, which had some success and some failures. So we saw both sides of the coin, and we really learned from that. Aalborg, you know, is really nice example of some of the GBI infrastructure that they put in before we really got our head around the importance of GBI in terms of Docklands regeneration. So, and sorry, just to touch off the other partners, obviously having the two Irish researchers was critical, and they really were constant support for us and gave us confidence, you know, that the approach being taken and the research being taken was focused on our needs in combination with our partners, and Rampol as well, bringing that professional consultancy approach as well, and their experience of actual delivery and partnership with developers across different projects in Europe. So it was a really good mix of partners there, and I think that's very important maybe for anyone getting involved in ESPON is to identify good partners. The benefits, touched on it already, a light application process, that was definitely the case, relative, and it's all relative to other European projects. So at the time we were resource light, so we certainly identified this as being one of the benefits of trying to lead on it. And throughout the process, it was probably easy to identify times where you needed to dip in and focus on it. Those key dates I highlighted, and also the workshops as well. And then obviously the review and feedback was critical as well at different stages. Being the lead partner, setting the agenda with strong support, particularly from our two Irish research partners. And then in terms of that local research support, the strong knowledge and understanding that was already there through previous research that was done, that was actually Cork specific. So building on that. We certainly networked with like-minded city partners as well, and learned a lot from that. And critically, I think, you know, for targeted analysis, the focused outputs, you know, that you have a pathway for what you're going to use. We were obviously taking on a new city plan, and particularly for Tivoli, where there was less history in terms of planning policy and development management side of things and planning applications, it was very much the need for a new agenda for that site. There was lots of very short and high level strategic thinking on it, but not that sort of placemaking element to that. So we learned a lot that we applied in what we now have as policy in the new city plan. Learnings, I suppose, timing the pathway for your bespoke research is very important. So there is the application process outside the year of research and knowledge transfer and policy making. So having an awareness of where you want this to fit in and making sure that your timing for putting it in as a strong pathway to influence whatever you're trying to get out of it, I think is very important. So that worked quite well for us, actually, particularly in terms of Tivoli. Probably less so for Docklands, which has only really taken off since the URDF funding was approved at scale a number of years ago, and new teams have been set up on that. Because things that are produced are quickly forgotten, and so the timing element, I think, is key, so you can apply it. I definitely think the second one, in terms of senior manager and multi-stakeholder inputs, not just for the interviews. In our own case, I think if I was to go back, I'd certainly set up a steering group and a working group that kind of tries to embed what we're doing into our own internal instructions and possibly key external stakeholders as well, in a sort of more phased process over the course of the year, so that when you do reach the end point, it's not the end point. There's people have buy-in and they know what the project was all about. Allocation of time, a key point. Certainly, we had myself and an executive planner were the two key stakeholders, with some assistance along the way, really driving it. So you have to, I suppose, plan that out well and have the ability and support around you to be able to do that. But as I said, it is one of those things with good support and good partners that you can certainly work it into your work streams as well and come away with something that's very strong. The idea of a more flexible topic, we were very targeted in what we want out of it, which was very good, particularly for Tivoli at the time. But obviously the potential, as Victor said, to look at other issues, target analysis that we all challenge, and Kevin has mentioned climate adaptation, the whole issue of compact growth, and how you deliver that in a local scenario, and learning from like-minded partners that we don't really know about, until we actually do this research. And housing delivery is obviously another one that could be touched off. So that's my thoughts on it. I'm happy to take on any questions and answers there towards the end as well. So I'll hand back to yourself, Kevin. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lorcan. I think that was really excellent overview of how ESPON can work in a really practical way, and we know for our own work how that has worked through into the city development plan, and and how important that is. I think we've a few questions in relation to that, and I will get to them at the end. So I'll just move on now and hand over, I suppose, from the academic side of this, and we've Niamh Moore-Cherry from UCD and Cian O'Callaghan from TCD, and they'll give an overview of their perspective on the project and ESPON. So over to you guys.
Great. Thanks very much, everybody. Just checking that everybody can hear us okay.
Yeah, perfect, thanks.
Excellent. So it's great to be here, and thank you very much for the invitation. We're just going to share our screen now, so hopefully you can see. Perfect. So following up on what Lorcan has said, it was really interesting actually being the academic stakeholder, because you get a slightly different insight through these particular projects. So we're just going to talk a little bit about what we did as the academics on this, and we were obviously part of a team. And I think what was challenging for us was, and we'll come to this, was also working, one of the other research partners was that private consultancy. So there was a little bit of, I suppose, different cultures coming at this as well. So the objectives of the project from our perspective were to provide insights to policymakers on the potential regional impact of port city regeneration as drivers of sustainable urbanisation and resilience, but also to provide municipalities with a better understanding of the kinds of frameworks and tools that they could use to enable, inspire and facilitate the implementation of sustainable port city regeneration. And I think that word implementation is really important, because this was a very practical piece of work that we were asked to do. So the UCD team was responsible for one of the biggest pieces of work involved in the project, which was a desk-based analysis of European small and medium-sized port cities that had undergone or were going under or were planning to undergo regeneration. But we also, along with the other research partners, had a particular case study focus, and ours was a case study of Cork. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that desk-based analysis that we did. Basically, we were asked to provide this database that Lorcan has referred to, examining, I suppose, patterns across Europe in terms of port city regeneration. And what's really interesting when you do the literature review on this is that actually in most cases, what's being written about are very large cities or capital cities or regional capitals, but there's less information about these small to medium-sized European cities. So our first challenge, I suppose, from a research perspective, was identifying what we actually meant by small and medium-sized cities. So we used Eurostat, and we used the EU OECD harmonized definition of small and medium-sized cities, which began at cities which were no smaller than 50,000 population. We then came down to, well, how do you define the city and the city boundary? So thinking about, are we looking at functional urban areas? Are we looking at cities? Are we looking at greater cities? And again, there was quite a lot of discussion around what was most appropriate to the particular data that we were interested in. And then when we had our two definitions, we actually had to go to Eurostat and then try and extract the data for these cities, which was quite a large data management task. So what we found across Europe was that 791 cities met that population criteria, and you have them mapped here. And what you see from the map is that there were clusters in old industrial heartlands, which I suppose is no surprise. So in the Midlands of England, for example, in the Rhine-Ruhr region, and other old industrial heartlands of Europe, where I suppose you could say city growth had actually been, I suppose, stalled once the deindustrialization happened across Europe. So that was the first step, identifying what we actually meant and where these small to medium-sized European cities were located. So then we had to narrow that down and figure out, well, which of these 791 are actually port cities? And 144 cities met the criteria, the population criteria, but also the criteria of having a port. So 92 of those cities were defined as small cities that you can see in green, with 52 of them being medium-sized cities. And again, you can see, no surprise, most of them are on the coast, but we did have river-based port cities, which was something that we kind of hadn't given much thought to, I suppose, before the project actually started. And then from those 144 cities, we had to do a lit review, a policy review, looking at city plans to figure out how many of them showed some evidence based on a desk type study of regeneration. So 73 of the 144 cities had some relationship with regeneration. And we then had to come up with some sort of a classification for regeneration in these places. And what we saw was some variation across Europe, which is demonstrated in the map. Some of them were planned as a unitary project, so they were master planned to their full extent. Others were more nascent, so they were just beginning to do something. Others had more fragmented regeneration, so that would really be a site-by-site approach to regeneration. And then there were 48 that we just couldn't classify based on the available information. And one of the challenges here, and it's just coming back to me as I speak, was actually trying to access information in English was a challenge, because of course in many of these cities they're producing their plans in their own languages. So that was quite challenging at times. And I suppose then we had this idea of there was a much greater diversity in the port city relationship than the literature is showing, but also than we had expected to see. So that was a nice, I suppose, academic finding from this, a contribution, but also it was really important to contextualize the kind of regeneration that was going on in different places. As well as that contribution, we were also responsible for the Cork case study, which was mirroring what the other research partners were doing in Catania, Aalborg and Brest. So we began with a desk-based analysis of key policies affecting Cork City docklands and Tivoli docklands, And then we did interviews. So we did 16 in-depth qualitative semi-structured interviews with key stakeholders. And Lorcan and his colleagues were very central to us being able to identify and access key stakeholders. So that relationship with the policymakers was really, really important in terms of getting us access quickly to the people that we needed to be speaking to. And we've just given you a breakdown there of the interviewees, showing a cross-section from commercial interests across state agencies, semi-states, private planning consultants, through to local authority planners from various departments across the local authorities. So our overall project conclusions were that European small and medium-sized port cities have real latent potential for more sustainable forms of urban development, and we're really at the start of what might be possible in these cities. Based on the research, successful regeneration requires a multi-level and multi-agency governance approach. And we felt that the literature at present, or what's in the public domain, really underplays the complexity of arrangements needed to actually affect change. But also that port city regeneration is not just about a commercial or a physical regeneration, but it can have significant social and cultural implications as well. And keeping an eye on ensuring that this is all happening in an inclusive manner is really, really important. And then finally, I suppose we reinforced the idea that port cities have a huge amount to contribute to enhancing urban sustainability, addressing issues like climate adaptation, climate mitigation, but also facilitating transitions to a greener economy, which is obviously a key priority in Europe, but also at national, regional and local government level as well. So I'm going to hand over to Cian, who's going to talk a little bit just about the experience as academics on this project.
Great. Thanks, Niamh, and thanks for inviting us. So just going to say a little bit about being the academic partner on this. As Lorcan kind of said, they kind of set off the project, and Niamh kind of came on as initially one of the academic partners, and so I came on a little bit later, just as we were kind of kicking off or starting the final bid document, I think. So in terms of sort of benefits, we think that the funding, the thematic project, funding to undertake a thematic project that we already had kind of pre-existing interest in, was a positive for us. So both of us had some experience in researching waterfront transformation in Dublin and Cork, and that was like a really good opportunity to sort of like to pick up some of those research interests again. And for me personally, to get back doing some research in Cork actually was very positive kind of outcome there. There was the opportunity to collaborate nationally and internationally and get a sense of a particular topic in a cross-European way. So we kind of met a lot of other academic partners and got to visit some of the other port cities. So I think that was really kind of useful in that regard, kind of learning from those additional case studies and to seeing kind of what's happening in those cities and how they compare and how they differ from the Irish context was really useful for us. But also I think as Niamh has described, undertaking that kind of analysis of small and medium-sized port cities was a way also in which we were kind of challenging maybe some of our own assumptions from the literature about how that port-city relationship works and the complexity of that. Also got to engage with and visibility to policymakers of academic research approaches and experiences. And so very much kind of working with Cork stakeholders in particular, but also the other stakeholders in the other cities was positive in that kind of sense. And it was an opportunity for us to talk through kind of some of the methods we've been using and to look at how those might be applied or useful in a policy context. We mentioned kind of working with Ramball, the private sector consultant, was a learning opportunity. And this was kind of pros and cons, I think, for us in terms of maybe the differences in terms of how those partners approach the question of research and qualitative research in particular, and I suppose project management. So positives might be in sense of kind of learnings around project management. Some of maybe the delays we had, I suppose, were around kind of differences in maybe how we were working through some of the methods of qualitative data collection that we were doing. So why would you engage with ESPON? So I think both myself and Niamh have been involved in a couple of different ESPON projects, and so can speak from this one, but also maybe across some other experiences. The application process itself, relatively simple and straightforward. And so once you're involved in a consortium, the application is not too much of an onerous thing. The good opportunity to develop policy engaged works and networks, which are longer term implications for research. So for both of us, I think there's both of us like to work at that sort of interface between academic research and policy research, and very much kind of interested in how academic research can also inform and contribute to decision making at that kind of policy level. So that was really kind of encouraging for us. And also I think that both of us have developed networks through this project that have continued on into subsequent projects. So also opportunities to learn from visiting other partner cities in the consortium. So we were just discussing kind of a research trip to Brest, which was very sort of useful and very enlightening, I think, in terms of thinking about kind of how they were managing that port city relationship and thinking about regeneration processes there too. So it's an interesting topic. There's places to visit, peoples and opportunities to attract funding. So these projects can also be a way of building kind of larger research consortiums, or to, you know, getting in touch with like-minded people across the European space. And there's also an opportunity to learn a new skill set here from working with the consultancy and how they approach research. So as we mentioned, there's kind of pros and cons, but also learnings from that. Being part of a consortium can be fairly time intensive. There's regular reporting and expectations over a very short time frame. So this is something kind of within the sort of ESPON framework that can be a bit of a challenge to the short turnaround between getting the project initiated and the first report, for example. There's always a challenge of marrying policy, private sector and academic perspectives and approaches in the consortium. And that also requires time and a bit of kind of working out. So somewhat of getting that kind of confirmed maybe ahead of time is probably useful in terms of the bid process itself. There's time commitment obviously here too, and this needs to be carefully mapped out from the start. Obviously the projects themselves have quite a tight turnaround, and that has to sort of fit into a busy work life for ourselves as we go along too. Defining terminology early on can be helpful to ensure working towards common goal and outputs and outcomes as well. So finally, then just a quick slide on sort of lessons and learning. And so we kind of split it into maybe what we find is really positive and what we find is a little bit of a challenge. So it provides an opportunity to explore the intersection of academic and policy approaches to urban planning issues, which is always really generative, I think, and is both kind of useful, hopefully, for policymakers, but also for us as academics in understanding those kinds of relationships between policy and place. So we had to develop relationships with policymakers, which continued into new projects. And this has been true for both of us. So people like Larkin have been really good kind of contacts for subsequent research that both myself and Niamh has done. Offers means to build international research networks as well. So learn from the researchers and the other institutions and what they're doing, and a chance to develop and expand areas of research expertise. So as I mentioned, for both myself and Niamh, this is building on previous research areas. In terms of some of the challenges, then timelines, projects are short, and this can be difficulty in planning and execution. The balance between academic and policy objectives needs careful consideration also, and early discussions with consortium on understanding of key concepts, approaches, and methods is essential. So that's us.
Thank you very much, Cian and Niamh. We've some time now for the Q&A, and there's still time for people to put some questions in the chat there. And if I could ask Victor and Larkin, if you can maybe turn your cameras back on. Maybe just to kick off there, and maybe this directed at Larkin in the first instances. What did you learn about implementation best practice from the project? And I suppose a follow up to that, but is there anything you would have done differently from when you started out?
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, there was some really good learning in that, particularly from our site visits and through our partners. I go back to Brest, particularly. You know, catalyst is one of the things that was being discussed a lot. You know, how do you create momentum around these really complex regeneration areas, multiple landowners, the need for multiple uses. And in Brest, they had an early intervention there. Cultural facility was a theatre that was quite close geographically to their long main street, and you drop down significant levels. So on a map, on a 2D, it looked quite, you know, great location for, new cultural use, highly accessible. But in reality, and from talking to the partners that were involved in it from the breast side as well, it wasn't a success. So there was money poured into it, but you could see the anti-social and graffiti around it wasn't being used particularly well. It's because of the location. So that the idea was good, but even though it was on a map quite good, it was in a kind of a tight and inappropriate location for it. And yet they had an amazing example of how to do it right then in another portion of their regeneration in a place called Capuisson, where they developed a huge, very impressive multi-use library. But around it, there was kind of a lot more going on in terms of regeneration as well. So it wasn't just a cultural use, so this idea of a catalyst and getting one singular use, getting it close to the center, didn't work there. And yet this larger sort of mixed use regeneration with a pretty impressive library with other uses around it, it was way more successful, and was something they were rightly proud of. So that was a learning. Definitely. Is there something in the second part of the question? Is there something we do differently? I kind of flagged, I suppose, from our own perspective, maybe embedding it internally. The process is quite good for a local authority to get involved in, and Niamh and Cian have highlighted a lot of heavy lifting on the research element of it to get it to a point where we can actually use it, but to show that to people who are making decisions internally and stakeholders, to show that there's a lot of thinking going on here, to pick out some very pertinent case studies and examples of how to do things right. I think you need to not just present a document at the end. I think you need to, within your own circles, is create maybe a steering group to take people along and embed that thinking and how the research is and how the research has been done, and then how the case studies that you flag, how good they are or how bad they are. As I said, there's some examples of bad ones as well, which were equally important. To embed that whole process in with the decision makers in around your own circle at local authority level. I think you just need to. I definitely would have established a steering group and a working group maybe to embed that within our own sections.
Thank you very much, Lorcan. I think that they're very good points about how embedding these projects for long-term benefit, and also the point that you learn as much from things that didn't go right as planned from those that do. So thank you. Maybe this is one for Victor in terms of ESPON itself. Is there kind of in terms of developing partnerships with various groups across Europe, is there a kind of a matchmaking process for you to find out who else is involved or common areas of interest?
There is. We don't facilitate this process directly as we are a small program, but we have now the, I would say, armed forces in our respective countries, namely the ESPON Contact Point. So we would like to channel it through the ESPON Contact Point, like the one in Ireland, to in case you have a certain need for partner search, to actually go to your ESPON Contact Point. They will raise it with the equivalent points in other countries to see if there is any similar organization looking for policy advice, and the ECPs may then act as a sort of a middleman in that respect. When listening to the presentations, actually, I have a thought to maybe clarify one thing. The consortium is not, the making of consortium does not imply that from the very outset you need to have a researcher. It's so that for targeted analysis, you come up as a group of policy stakeholders with a specific request. You submit a proposal to us. In case we select it, and this is a very short track process, then we work together with the group of stakeholders on developing terms of reference for contracting external researchers. And only then researchers actually bid with their offers, and we then select the best qualified researchers to assist us It's not that from the very outset you need in your partnership or consortium to have researchers. Absolutely not. This is not even allowed. So just bear it in mind that this is a sort of a two-step process. And the most important is that you find the people representing the authorities, the administration, the stakeholders, the policy stakeholders that you would like to work with. This is for targeted analysis. For a direct service for the country, this is even more straightforward. You come to us as stakeholders, you involve your MC members, so David Kelly and our ESPON Contact Point, so that they know they are engaged. And then together with you, we decide on what will be best for your country, the island or your region in Ireland. And then we could contract out researchers. You don't need to do it. Maybe this clarifies the point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Victor. And just final question there, maybe for Cian and Niamh. And you spoke about the demands of participating organizations, and could you elaborate a bit on that, for what that meant in terms from the inception to as the project developed, and the positives and negatives of that?
Yeah, thanks very much, Kevin. I think we both really enjoyed working on the project, but the thing about the targeted analysis, it was very quick. It was 12 months. And it was quite a significant amount of work within that particular time period. I think one of the biggest challenges was how fast reporting needed to happen and the volume of reporting within that 12-month period. So I think within a couple of weeks, we had a kickoff meeting and an inception report due, and then we had an interim report due halfway through, and then we had a final report due at the end. So there was a lot of reporting, which may have been streamlined since, I think, a little bit for some of these, but Victor might come in on that in a second. So I think that was a big challenge for us, where we wanted to just get on and do the research. There was quite a lot of reporting required. I think as well, it was a huge project. So even just talking through that kind of a database, the challenges around just putting that database together were absolutely huge. I don't think any of us, I suspect, Lorcan, you guys didn't realize how big that was going to become, and we certainly didn't either in it. So I think the scope of the project was probably something that could have been done over a longer time period. But having said that, having a deadline is always a good thing for an academic. So we met all our deadlines, we met all our targets. So I think we're both really proud of the work that we did. And we were just talking before the seminar there that we just realized doing this how much work we have that we could actually use to publish. And we will be coming back to Kevin and to Lorcan and so on to update what we did. So I think there's going to be much longer term benefits. COVID probably kind of impacted a little bit, but I would say that there were some really, really positive benefits. But the challenges were just logistical, I would say.
I think just to sort of add to that, I think, from the two main tasks, I guess, we were responsible for were the first, the sort of the database, and you've kind of talked about the challenges of that, and then the Cork case study. And I think we all found the work we did in Cork very interesting. And I think that we got, like, from an academic side, we got really good data as well, from that interview data. And I think that the report we wrote, I hope that was useful for Cork. And I think it was, we were kind of quite happy with that as like an analysis of like some of the challenges that are going on with the port regeneration in the city. And it was really kind of useful. I think where there's some other challenges around that can be, and it's probably because we're geographers as well. So like we would probably spend ages kind of thinking through the different regional and institutional differences between the 4 case studies involved. And so there's a little bit of work, I suppose, in that, in terms of like how you, for the final report, which is the synthesis report, you integrate the insights from those 4 contexts, which can be quite different in terms of just their institutional framework and the set of actors involved and things like that. So in the main, they're sort of like they're good problems, but just obviously on a short turnaround with a project that can create some sort of pressures on its own.
Thank you very much for those answers. I think you've broadened out the insight into the whole ESPON process. Sorry, Victor, you have another point?
Yes, there was actually on this point that the ESPON program has been evolving, and we also learned a lot from this, lots of bureaucracy that we put on our, researchers. So in this program now, there will be less bureaucracy, less reporting, and also lighter less voluminous reports that would expect from the researchers.
Thanks for that. That's good to hear. And hopefully Cian and Niamh will be involved in future projects as well. So look, I'd like to thank all the contributors and for the questions as well. But before we wrap up, very importantly, I need to hand over to Caroline as the contact point for ESPON in Ireland, just for her to say a few words and for her, I suppose, to give an overview of the future in relation to it. So I'll pass over to you, Caroline.
Perfect. Hopefully you can all see that. So just very quickly, just to elaborate a little bit further just on the role of, I suppose, the governance of ESPON in Ireland. So the responsible ministry, just so you know, is the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage, and the National and Regional Planning Unit within that. You've met both David and Kevin this morning, and they are our monitoring committee members from Southern Regional Assembly. And then, as has been mentioned a couple of times, I'm the ESPON Contact Point for Ireland, and I work out of Maynooth University. And I've been in this role now since 2015. And so hopefully I have a bit of experience that I can bring to bear in terms of anyone who is really interested in engaging further with ESPON. So really the role of the ECP, it too has been evolving over the various programming periods. And so now for ESPON 2030, we have 3 key roles to play. I suppose in terms of how I can support any of you listening today, that sort of falls under action point 1 there. It's very much really about building the profile of ESPON in Ireland. And then for anyone who is interested in learning more or becoming involved in ESPON programs, to reach out to me and we can have a conversation and see how the ESPON program can best fit your needs. And indeed, if it's helpful, I'm very happy to come out and speak to you or to you and other colleagues within your organizations to give you greater insight and understanding of the ESPON program at work. In terms of national knowledge development, which you would have heard is a key building block of the ESPON 2030 program, with the MC members, we will be organising a series of events with 2 planned for later this year. So do keep an eye on our various social media platforms around that and details of those shortly. But it's very much looking at how the ESPON research that has been conducted can feed into and support national, regional and local policy making. And finally, then it is to continue to support Victor and his team in the ESPON EGTC in terms of better understanding Irish needs in terms of policy making, research needs, where there are gaps, where there are opportunities, and how best to close those circles. Just lifted one of Victor's slides there just to recap on whether it is European research programs or the targeted analysis, it must fall within the broad scope of the 8 thematic actions that have been identified. So just showing this slide again to remind you of what they are. And as Kevin mentioned, these really do strongly resonate with key challenges for Irish society and policymakers. So I think it provides therefore a lot of opportunities for Irish engagement in the ESPON programs. Just to flag, twice a year, ESPON has an ESPON week, which is where the monitoring committee and the ECP networks come together, but also where thematic seminars are held. And it's a great way to get a deeper insight into the research of ESPON. So just to flag, the next ESPON week is taking place in middle of November, with the seminar focusing on small and medium-sized cities. So again, a theme very relevant for Ireland, and for those of you in a position to maybe attend in person, I would really encourage you to do so. It's also a great networking opportunity, and also a way to start to begin to build your networks around potential ESPON challenges, opportunities that you may be thinking about. And again, if you have any questions on that, please don't hesitate to get in touch. And therefore, in terms of how do you get in touch? Well, there are a number of ways. So there is an ESPON website, espon.eu. And again, please get the spelling of that right, or you will end up on some printer networking website. So espon.eu, which will tell you everything you need to know about the ESPON program in terms of upcoming events, open calls, emerging deadlines for targeted analysis, etc. And also then we have an Ireland ESPON page as well, which is a new development and which we are starting to populate with activities that will be happening in Ireland. So again, useful for you to kind of keep a regular check on that to find out what's happening. We do have an ESPON, I was going to say Twitter, but it's not Twitter anymore, X platform, to which, again, follow us. And again, you will receive regular updates on what's happening and opportunities within the ESPON program. We also have developed a national database. So if you're interested in being added to that, just drop an email to ESPON Ireland, all one word, @mu.ie, and we'll get you added up to that. And again, we regularly send out communications regarding upcoming calls and developments under the ESPON 2030 program. So again, as Victor said, you know, if you are interested, we can help in just walking you through the ropes of being involved, the opportunities of being involved, and helping you to connect to other potential partners throughout Europe using the ESPON Contact Point network. There is a contact point in every member state. We meet twice a year. Some of us have been around the block for a while now, and we have developed very strong friendships, which we want to use to help you. So please do get in touch, and we look forward to the next time we see Victor for that map of Ireland, not to be showing zero participation in ESPON, but actually to have upped the ante there. So thank you very much, and back to you, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Caroline. I just draw it to a close, and just to thank everybody for their participation. Thanks to Victor, Lorcan, Niamh and Cian. Also thanks to David here beside me, and also Anne in the background who made sure everything worked very smoothly. And obviously, I suppose the key point of the purpose of today was to get people thinking about participating and to take up that opportunity that Caroline outlined there of the resource that's there for future questions. We'll also be in contact about future events as well. So I'll say I'll leave it at that, and thank you very much for everybody for participating. So bye now.